Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 21st of May 2024. This is going to be a fairly substantial video because it was Ramstein yesterday. There's a lot of things being announced in terms of military aid and also in terms of expectations for the use of weapons, expectations being thrust upon Ukraine. We're going to start with Lloyd Austin here, who is the US Defense Secretary, talking about bumbling his way through a question concerning whether Ukraine can use missiles, American missiles, to strike Russian targets within Russia.
Be able to use American air defenses to hit those Russian bombers in Russian territory.
Well, again, you can diagram a number of different cases for, whatever. I would say that we have been clear about providing Ukraine the ability to defend its sovereign territory. And again, the dynamics of an aerial engagement, I leave it up to the experts, but certainly, our expectation is that they continue to use the weapons that we provided on targets inside of Ukraine. Now, the aerial dynamics a little bit different, and so
what he means by aerial dynamics here is interesting. So, does he mean in a dogfight you can shoot? Well, he says, "I'm not an expert. I'm not going to make a comment on that," which is given scope for a Russian plane to be shot down over Russia in a dogfight. Or does this mean a Russian plane dropping bombs can be shot down over Russia? Or does it mean that Russian missiles can be shot down or drones can be shot down while they're still in Russia on their en route to Ukraine? So there's a lot of scope for needing more clarity. This almost gives, in answering a question that seeks to get clarity, he sows more confusion or vagueness. But the idea is that we're still in a situation where Ukraine are being pressured not to strike targets within inside Russia.
But again, don't want to speculate on any one or any type of engagement here at the podium. So, and again, the dynamics of an aerial engagement. I
want to go back to some of the wordage he said. So let's just go back.
American air defense hit those Russian bombers in Russian territory.
Well, again, you can diagram a number of different cases for, whatever. I would say that we have been clear about providing Ukraine the ability to defend its sovereign territory. And again, the dynamics of an aerial engagement, I leave it up to the experts, but certainly, our expectation is that they continue to use the weapons that we provided on targets inside of Ukraine. Now,
our expectation is that they continue to provide. They hit targets within Ukraine. So their expectation is that, which is really frustrating because actually Ukraine just want the ability to strike targets within Russia with decent weapons that they are being provided with. Ben Hodges, to this, retired General Ben Hodges, says a persistent confusion over a terrible nonsensical policy is a result of the administration's inability to clearly define a desired strategic outcome that we want Ukraine to defeat Russia. It's in our own strategic interest. Colby Badwar says Zelenskyy tells Reuters in an exclusive interview, and we're going to go through the interview, but let's pick out some of the main points first, that they have been pleading for permission to strike Russian territory with donated weapons. So far, quote, so far there is nothing positive, he said. UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said Ukraine can use their weapons to do this, and the French have no objections either. Yet we do not see Storm Shadow scale BG strikes on Russia, which further confirms that the US is demanding that Ukraine not use any donated weapons to strike Russia. And this is something I talked about yesterday in the live with Greg Terry and have done previously, is that exactly that. UK and France have given permission, but we've not seen that. Is it because actually those cruise missiles are better used at the moment on targets within sovereign Ukrainian territory that actually because the range isn't amazing, you would only be able to hit things relatively close to the Ukrainian border over the other side of the border, but actually there still are high value targets within inside the territory of Ukraine to hit first? Or is it that they are not allowed to hit targets even with those, as according to American pressure? Fabian Hoffman here says, as I have noted repeatedly, the main reason why the Kerch Bridge is still standing are Western-imposed targeting restrictions. Zelenskyy would be fully capable of causing critical damage to this bridge target if Ukraine were to receive permission from the US to engage it. So you remember, the explosion of the bridge previously was done with Ukrainian explosives packed into a truck, into a lorry, and that circuitous mission that went all around and then eventually got over to going over the bridge and then blew up with hex whatever it is, the explosives inside those big rolls of cellophane. But that wasn't done with US weaponry or allied weaponry. So the claim here is that the Ukrainians could take out this Kerch Bridge. They have the ability with the Scale PG and Storm Shadow, one would presume, to do that with their Broach warheads that aren't maybe as good as the Taurus to do that, but they could still do it with enough of them. The idea that the reason that they haven't, he suggests, is because the pressure has been put on Ukraine not to do that. So Ukraine battle map says this means Ukraine cannot strike 1. Russia's main logistics, 2. Factories, 3. Ammunition depots, 4. Fighter jets launching FAB, the guided glide bombs, 5. Air defences, 6. Troops and other equipment, 7. The port of Novorossiysk with missiles, 8. Most of Russia's combat-ready Ka-52 attack helicopters that are within ATACMS range, 9. Repair facilities and equipment storage that are purposefully placed a couple of kilometres from the border in Belgorod, so HIMARS can't hit them, 10. Air bases are one of the most significant factors to Russian success in the battlefield. 35% of the Su-34s are at Morozovsk Air Base, 270 kilometers from the front line. Several 300-kilometer cluster ATACMS missiles would take them out. I don't know if they're being range. Well, 270 kilometers from the front line, yeah. Maybe. Most importantly, Ukraine cannot effectively deter invasions from Russia of bordering regions like Sumy, Kharkiv and Chernihiv. All of Russia is a safe spot against missiles for Russian forces, while Ukraine has no safe places, no logistics or air bases that are immune from missile attacks. And indeed, Russia can use Iranian-provided weapons and North Korean-provided weapons to do so. It's just insane. US needs to realise that by sending Ukraine ATACMS and F-16s, striking Russia with Gimlets, HIMARS and F-16s is necessary for Ukraine to win the war or make any significant gains on the battlefield and stop an invasion from Russia. Hopefully this necessary decision doesn't get postponed for another 1 or 2 years like ATACMS was. Ukraine will also need MLRS cluster rockets launched from HIMARS M270s and the best equipped F-16s possible. Now, interestingly, Victoria Nuland has come out and spoken against this positioning. So American doctrine says that for sustainable defense, says Mykola Bielyeskov, for sustainable defense, one needs to target reserves and second echelons with long-range firepower to ease pressure on front lines. Thus, Ukraine is forced to fight in the way US never would fight. Such limits waste taxpayers' money without producing proper results. So if you want the best use of American weapons to get the best bang for your buck, then I'm afraid you are going to have to let Ukraine strike within Russia, but you're not allowing that, it appears. And Victoria Nuland here talks to this.
They need to be able to stop these Russian attacks that are coming from bases inside Russia. So I think there's also a question of whether we, the United States and our allies, ought to give them more help in hitting Russian bases, which heretofore we've not been willing to do. I think if the attacks are coming directly from over the line in Russia, that those bases ought to be fair game, whether they are where missiles are being launched from or where they are where troops are being supplied from. I think it's time for that because Russia has obviously escalated this war, including, as you said at the beginning, attacking Russia's second city, Kharkiv, which is not on the front lines, and trying to decimate it without ever having to put a boot on the ground. So I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
One of the reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia, pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why So why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support. So they are getting a direct advantage in this war from our hesitation, and they have escalated massively. As you know, they have flattened a third of Kharkiv without ever having to get on the ground there. So it is time to stop that and help Ukraine push them back.
Absolutely, 100%. This is coming from someone who was under the Obama administration not providing lethal weaponry to Ukraine, as I've discussed previously. So, you know, for her to say this, I think is incredibly significant. The Kyiv Independent reports that Ukraine must be allowed to use Western-supplied weapons to strike targets inside Russian territory, as according to the Lithuania's Foreign Minister, Gabrielius Landsbergis. In an interview with the French TV station LCI, Landsbergis said restrictions such as those imposed by the US on using long-range ATACMS missiles inside Russia were a mistake. Now, we are starting to get this gathering momentum of people who are united against the position that it seems that really only the US, possibly Germany, Italy as well, but it's this position that seems logically untenable. It seems doctrinally untenable in terms of how to prosecute a war, and it seems like it is really disadvantaging the Ukrainians here. For Flash News says all decisions on Western aid are about a year late, Zelenskyy says in an interview with Reuters, the one we're going to go through. So not only are they not allowed to strike certain targets, but also everything that they do get is a year after they've asked for it. And it eventually gets given. Why that year? Why that year of death and suffering for Ukrainians? Because they weren't provided with that initially. It seems to this ridiculous merry dance that one has to go through in order to get any particular weapon. Requested. Oh, 6 months, requested. 9 months, requested. 12 months. Oh yeah, you can have it now. Brilliant. Thanks for that. And it's not about like biting the hand that feeds you. This is someone fighting for the existence of their country going forward. They need everything, and when they eventually get everything, but they get it too late or a year late, then it's really frustrating, isn't it? Especially when it's that same pattern with each thing that's asked for. He also said that all Western aid decisions for Ukraine are about a year late. He also suggested Western allies could help more directly by shooting down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory to protect Ukrainian citizens. So Calder B. Badwar says of this, Zelenskyy confirms that they are being threatened with military aid being completely cut off. Update by Reuters, Zelenskyy reiterated that he had not broken agreements with allies not to use their weapons inside Russia. Quote, "We can't put the whole volume of weapons at risk." In other words, if we did shoot inside Russia, we would put our supply of weapons from the US, is the implication, at risk. That is the constrictions being put on the weapon provisions to Ukraine, the conditioning. That's what I was looking for. John Ridge, who's with the Tochny team, says, "I've been hinting at this for quite a while. Since February 2022, the United States has directly and explicitly threatened to terminate all security assistance to Ukraine if they employ US-provided weapons or weapons provided by other allies against targets in Russia." So let's go to this Reuters piece then. "Exclusive Western decisions on key military aid to Ukraine are too slow," Zelenskyy says. Western allies are taking too long to make key decisions on military support for Ukraine, Zelenskyy told Reuters in an exclusive interview. He also said he was pushing partners to get more directly involved in the war with Russia by helping to intercept Russian missiles over Ukraine and allowing Kyiv to use Western weapons against enemy military equipment amassing near the border. Clearly frustrated, Zelenskyy described the delivery of the aid, in particular of air defences like the Patriot systems, which Ukraine relies on heavily in its war with Russia, as, quote, "one big step forward, but before that, 2 steps back. Every decision," he says, "to which we, and then later everyone together, comes to is late by around 1 year." He said, wearing the trademark khaki t-shirt and trousers and raising his voice at times. His tough remarks come at a perilous time for his forces, which are outnumbered and outgunned by Moscow's military and losing territory in the northeast and east of the country. Zelenskyy suggested ways in which allies could help more directly, including by shooting down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory in certain circumstances. Quote, Russians are using 300 planes on the territory of Ukraine, he said. We need at least 120, 130 planes to resist in the sky, he added, referring to US-designed F-16, some of which he hopes will be used in combat soon. Quote, you can't provide that right now? Okay, returning to the planes that you have on the territory of neighbouring NATO countries, raise them up, shoot down targets, protect civilians. Can they do this? I'm sure that yes. Is this an attack by NATO countries' involvement? No. The Ukrainian leader also said Kyiv was negotiating with international partners to use their weapons to strike Russian military hardware at the border and further inside Russian territory. So this is a clear understanding that they are not allowed to do so at the moment. So while there is some kind of strategic ambiguity often proposed by people like Lloyd Austin to say, well, we expect they don't do that, or we don't encourage it, which means that, yeah, they could do it, but we don't encourage it. But actually, they're not doing it. And Zelenskyy here is saying, we're not doing it because you've asked us not to. So you might be a little bit ambiguous in your rhetoric in public, but actually behind closed doors, you've told us in no uncertain terms, don't do it or you won't get weapons. And so they haven't done it, but they're frustrated. And I'm frustrated. This is not good enough. According to the 46, anyway, he said, so far, there is nothing positive, he said. Ouch. The United States has resisted Ukrainian calls to use its missiles against internationally recognized Russian territory, reflecting concerns in the West about the risk of escalation, while also seeking to ensure Kyiv emerges victorious. That's almost an impossible situation. They can't remain victorious if you can't allow them to shoot at the things that are firing at them from within inside Russia. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the US would never expect to do that if they're involved in a war, similarly. According to the 46-year-old, the battlefield situation in the northeast of the country is now under control after Moscow's forces crossed the border and launched incursions across the city of Kharkiv. He said that the world should not forget that Russia was also pushing hard in the east as well. Ukraine's forces are already stretched thin along the more than 1,000-kilometre front lines, but it will take time to prepare new recruits for battle under a new mobilisation drive, Zelenskyy said. On US politics, he said he did not see maximal risks from any change of administration in November's elections. Of course, he has to say that, even though Republican frontrunner Donald Trump is a Ukraine aid skeptic who has stressed America First policies. Quote, I don't believe that Republicans are against support for Ukraine, but some messages that are coming from their side raise concerns. Absolutely. And again, I advise anyone go and watch the Moscow Tools video by The Daily Show that shows that inside the Republican movement on the MAGA end of things, there are some absolutely insane pro-Putin views, like overtly pro-Putin. That I would like Putin to be our leader type views. I really like Putin. Putin is a really good guy. Putin he's clean. He's organised. He's this. He's that. And people pouring, virtuous evaluations on Putin that are completely undeserved, but that's coming from within certain movements, certain areas within the US political landscape, and that is deeply, deeply worrying. So, when he says, I'm not particularly worried going forward, but there are concerns, those concerns are certainly being voiced in a number of places, even if they aren't wide scale across the Congress. Like there was bipartisan support, really good bipartisan support for Ukraine aid, but it does have that partisan flavour to it. And then finally here, and I'm actually going to finish this video, I'm not going to go into the military aid. I'm actually going to separate that out because I think this is an important standalone video. Until Russia withdraws its troops, the United States will supply Ukraine with the weapons it needs to defend itself, said the US Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, during a meeting of the Security Council convened by Russia over the supply of Western weapons to Ukraine. So I think there are these mixed messages coming from the US because I don't think the US has a strong enough, robust enough, aggressive enough, I think is the right word, aggressive enough policy towards Ukraine because they're worried about escalation. So I think within the administration, you still have people, I'm sure there are people arguing. I'm sure Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan are probably having consistent arguments about what should be done to support Ukraine. And the DOD probably has its opinion, but within the DOD and within the security apparatus in the US, there probably is disagreement where you're having some people. I don't know what Lloyd Austin's deep opinions are on this. It could be exactly what he's just advocated for, or it could be that he actually believes we should be stronger on Ukraine. I don't know, but there are probably people in the DOD saying we shouldn't do this to escalate. We shouldn't allow the US weapons to be used inside Russia. And you'll have others saying, yes, we should. We need to go hard. In the same way that you've got retired generals having a whole range of different opinions about what should or shouldn't be done with regard to Ukraine. So I'm sure there are all these arguments going on in the US administration, and that then leads to sort of different messages coming out, which is, we're going to support you for as long as it takes, and we will provide weapons to Ukraine for as long as Russia has troops in Ukraine, until it withdraws its troops, whether that means to 1991 borders or 2014 borders, I don't know. That's a bit of clarity that could be added to that. But this is like, we're going to help you for as long as it takes, but we're also going to stop you using some of those weapons that we give you. So you can have these weapons, you can't do this with them, you can't do that with them, you can't do this with them. But we'll help you for as long as it takes. So you just got this schizophrenic approach to helping Ukraine that I think it belies possibly schizophrenia within the administration. That reflects that within the administration. So I think there needs to be a more aggressive approach. I think the anti-escalation people, such as it appears Jake Sullivan, need to be moved aside. And I think this is not useful that Ukraine can't strike within Russia. If they could, then... And now it's become this big argument is out in the open that now Russia can react to that if they do then say... The problem is they've made a rod for their own back, the Americans, by making such a big thing of this, rather than giving them this stuff and saying, yep, go and use it however you like, right from the beginning. And then they would use them in Russia, and Russia would have gone, but then just settled down into exactly what happens every time that they get these new kind of line pushing, envelope pushing, red line crossing weapons. They end up not doing anything because the only way they can go is nuclear. So they're not going to go nuclear if they start using Storm Shadows at particular bases across the border into Russia. I'm absolutely positive. But now they made such a song and dance about this decision that I think the US are more likely to be like recalcitrant, intransigent. They're not wanting to budge, and then not wanting to shift, because then it looks like they're going back on their word, and then it gives ammunition to the Russians to make an even bigger escalatory deal out of it. So it's just really damned frustrating. Anyway, that's my tuppence on that. And I think Zelenskyy is well within his rights to be really frustrated, really deeply frustrated, because you've got the tools. Yeah, finally, we've got these ATACMS who can be fired 300 kilometers, but we can't use them to the extent of their range. And we've got Storm Shadows and Scalps that could be used even further, but we can't use them because the US won't let us do what we want to do with them. And by the way, when we have used them at those sorts of targets within Ukraine, they have been used amazingly well. So come on, guys. Come on. Sort it out. And I wonder whether the US is also trying to do this kind of delicate line between people within the US. So when the people who are deeply pro-Ukraine and deeply anti-Ukraine, it's almost trying to appease both parties there. So not only they're trying to not be escalatory internationally with regard to what Russia might think, but trying to be not too hardcore for supporting Ukraine, just in case it, I don't know, erupts and becomes even more partisan in the US. Maybe, I don't know if that rationale makes sense, but it's just, I'm so frustrated about this. Let me know what you think. I'll then do my separate Ukraine aid video shortly.